somebody comes before all of that, and it's the one, the only, the man nice enough to join me out here in Sacramento, Jim Trotter on Twitter at Jim Trotter _ NFL, reporter, NFL media, author, ESPN and SI alum, Howard grad. Jim, how are you, sir? Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time.
No, I'm good, bro. Thanks for having me.
So let's start. So we're in Sacramento. There's lots of Raiders and Niners fans out here, mostly Niners. Let's start with Niners to begin with. They trade all that capital to the Dolphins to move up, take Trey Lance. He gets hurt, hurts his ankle. Then they have Jimmy, luckily, I guess, for them, but didn't even give him a playbook. Then he comes in, he gets hurt. Now you got Purdy coming in. What do you make of that whole situation? And is it realistic based on how good their team is around him for them to actually make a run?
Yeah, look, I was there the day that Purdy came in, and the thing that I took away from that game first and foremost was that you could tell the moment wasn't too big for him. And by that, I mean he wasn't intimidated coming off the bench early in that game, having to lead them. And remember, that was a big game against Miami. At that time, Miami was playing really well, wanted to make a statement coming out west and show that, it wasn't just beating up on the doormats of the league. And Purdy stepped in and played well. Didn't play great, but played well. And I remember talking to a couple of people afterwards in the organization, and they said, look, he puts in the time. He's going to be all right with everything that we have around him. And the next week, you remember, Purdy went out and played really well, and I reached back out to some of those folks, and basically the message I got was 3 words. See, I told you. So, well, that's 4 words, I believe. But anyway, yeah, can they make a run? Yeah, they can because of everything that's around him. And he's a guy that hasn't made a lot of mistakes, takes care of the ball for the most part. Their defense is outstanding, and they're able to run the ball. So, absolutely, they have an opportunity.
Now let's go to what used to be the other side of the bay, but they're in Vegas now, not in Oakland, much to my dismay as a Berkeley boy, Jim. But the Raiders, they bench Carr. We all know the numbers now. It's like a 5-point hit if they release him or trade him or whatever. If he gets hurt, then they'd be on the hook for 30, 40 something million. And they bench him for obviously a guy in stadium. That's not going to be their long-term answer there. Is that to you, Jim, based on all your experience in the NFL, is that a clear-cut sign that this relationship is officially over between Carr and the Raiders?
Well, I'll say this. If you had asked me that question before this season, I would say yes, it's a clear sign. But then I saw what happened with Jimmy Garoppolo, to go back to him this year, where it was clear he was out. He had said his goodbye to the local media. The team had made it clear they were moving on. As you said, they didn't even give him a playbook. And stranger things happen where he winds up back in San Francisco, not only back, but actually starting after Trey Lance got hurt. So I guess after all these years, what I say is that, you never say never. But clearly, if you were to ask me the odds, I think the odds are great that Derek Carr has played his final game with the Raiders. But until he's actually gone, I'm not going to say he's gone. But if you were asking me to put odds on it, yeah, I think he's done in Las Vegas.
The great Jim Trotter joins me. Zakariah filling in for Cattles and Ramie right here, KHTK. Follow him on Twitter at Jim Trotter _ NFL. Jim, I know that you like to go beyond just what happens on the field, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are with the whole situation in Washington. I can't figure out their name, or, Commanders, NFL team, football team, whatever. But in terms of the behind-the-scenes stuff, is this going to be a situation similar to what you saw with the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Clippers? Is he eventually going to be forced? I know Irsay was the only owner to come out and really verbally speak his displeasure and saying that he needs to sell the team. Is this inevitable that Snyder is going to move on from the franchise?
It sure feels that way, but, we have to step back and remember Daniel Snyder is the guy who also said he would never, ever change the team name. And for a long time, he stood up to anyone who challenged him on that. But ultimately, he did change it. Why? Because of the pressure that came from sponsors and to some extent the league. When sponsors threatened to pull out, the change was made. So I think there is enough pressure on him and where this is heading, and the fact that it's public knowledge that he has hired a firm to look into the value of the team and to see what's out there. I do believe his days are numbered in terms of being the owner of that franchise. I think that's a good thing. I think the situation that was there, we can blame a lot of other people, but the culture of an organization is set at the top, and that starts with ownership. And there are too many examples of people making allegations that he was involved and that he knew the things that were going on. And so from that standpoint, I think, yes, we are headed in that direction. How quickly it happens, I don't know, but I do believe we are headed in that direction.
Finally, Jim, what are your thoughts on all the rule changes? Like, I remember as a kid, Jim, growing up, when they had a segment called Jacked Up, where they showed guys getting, concussed and, paralyzed or whatever. And the whole panel would say, jacked up. Obviously that's been removed,
right.
And a lot of the rules have changed. But in terms of what you're seeing, because I guess it just bothers me when I see what I determined to be as a ticky-tack, roughing the passer call or something like that. Do you think that ultimately it's better to err on the side of the caution there?
Yes, I do. If you have known any of the players who have suffered from CTE or some who have passed away and then were diagnosed as having CTE, and Junior Seau was a good friend of mine, and he said, these are his words, not mine, one time when I asked him about the Saints bounty scandal back in the day and what was going on.
Bounty Gate, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things he said to me is that, we've got to protect players, and he said, otherwise guys are going to wake up in the morning and they're not going to remember their name. They're not going to remember their kids' names, not going to remember what day it is, all of those sorts of things. And I remember in hindsight at that time, after he passed away, I thought back to that conversation. And in my mind, I said, I wonder if he was talking about himself, and didn't think to ask him that because I didn't know that anything was wrong. And so the steps that the league is taking, while no question, I'm with you, there are times where I see a roughing the passer call and I say, you've got to be kidding me. I think that those things can be addressed to some extent, but in terms of, the defenseless receiver and those sorts of things, absolutely, I think the league is right in making some of the changes that it has made.
Always appreciate your perspective. Jim Trotter on Twitter at @JimTrotter_NFL, reporter, NFL media, author. Check out his books. He's a great writer, ESPN and SI alum. Jim, I really appreciate you taking out your time on this holiday weekend, and Happy New Year, my man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Same to you.
There you go. Jim Trotter. Fantastic as always. Really appreciate him